Joining me now is Florida Congressman, member of the House Armed Services, Homeland Security, and Select Committee on the Strategic Competition between the U.S. and China, Carlos Gimenez. Congressman, good morning to you. Your thoughts now that we've had this meeting between Blinken and Xi Jinping?
I really don't trust Secretary Blinken with much, and certainly not when it comes to dealing with the Chinese. You know, this is the individual that started the entire misinformation campaign on the Hunter Biden laptop by getting a bunch of security officials and intelligence officials to sign a letter saying that it was Russian misinformation, when in fact it was all fabricated by Mr. Blinken. And so going to China, begging to go to China to meet with the Chinese leadership, there's what on the face appears to be what they were talking about, but I really don't know what happened behind closed doors. And frankly, I don't trust this man.
Well, that's the broader question, I think, here is why did Xi Jinping agree to meet the Secretary of State? Because this was, from all we've learned, kind of a last-minute agreement by the Chinese president. What do they have to gain by hosting Blinken and by having that conversation? And I would say maybe it's because they don't want technology sanctions leveled against them. They're worried about their relationship economic-wise with the Europeans. They've got Ukraine as an issue as far as, and then with regards to their own economy. John Lonsky's on set with me. He mentioned the fact that you've got, 20% unemployment with the youth of China. So they've got their own economic problems. They need us. But yet they're still dismissing us and not talking about human rights abuses, not talking about, they barely talked about fentanyl, apparently.
Well, listen, I found it incredible that the President of the United States would actually say that a Chinese spy balloon that flew all the way across the United States over sensitive military installations, gathering information, intelligence the whole time it was here, that the Chinese leadership had absolutely no idea what it was doing here. And it was so embarrassing to them. No, it was embarrassing to the United States that we actually allowed it to do and complete its mission before we shot it down. And maybe that was one of the prerequisites that was needed by the Chinese in order to get Secretary Blinken to meet with their leadership. I don't know, but it certainly was a very odd statement from the President of the United States. Look, I sit on the Select Committee with China. China is not a competitor. China is our adversary. They are doing everything in their power to undermine us around the world. And so we need to wake up to the fact that they are. And yeah, we need to start the decoupling from China. We need to start the way that every dollar that we send to China is being used to undermine the United States of America. And so we need to wake up to that fact, and we need to start to decouple not only ourselves, but our allies need to start decoupling from China. China's business practices are predatory, and that's being kind. And so, that's what we need to do.
Well, and that was my point. I think that they're very concerned about more sanctions, being levied against them by our allies. I do want to ask you about this, though. Iran's president did meet with Cuba's leader late last week. That meeting took place in Havana. The pair slamming, quote, Yankee imperialism. And they talked about how to work together to get past U.S. sanctions on issues which includes electricity generation, biotech, mining. Your reaction to the fact that China is meeting with that the Iranians are meeting with the Cubans, basically just south of our own border?
The Iranians have been in Cuba and in South America for quite some time. We just haven't, reported on it. We have ignored it. But they're here. The Russians are here. The Iranians are here. The Chinese are here. The next one's going to show up is going to be the North Koreans. Watch. That's the four, legs of this stool or this chair that this unholy alliance that we see around the world. This is nothing new. Yankee imperialism. Cuba is the base. Cuba is also the cancer that's spreading throughout South America. That's where it originates from. It all originates from Cuba. And so we see Chinese spy bases down there. We see Russian spy bases down there. There's going to be a greater link with Iran. We also know from New York Times reporting that the United States is actually in negotiations with Iran, that nothing good is going to come out of that. Again, this administration is just utter failure in everything it does. And it looks like everything they do is to try to undermine U.S. interests.
Yeah. Well, Congressman Gimenez, it's always great to have you here. We appreciate your time this morning.
My pleasure.
All right.